G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. We'll have all the show notes and any resources mentioned in the cast on our website. With over 25 years in marketing, especially in small business, Toni strongly believes if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. And that's where your marketing should be built around. Marketing is more than a logo or advertising. It's a diverse range of elements from pricing, people, copy, packaging, and a quality product or service. For small business owners, sometimes the passion can overrule the commerciality or viability of something as you believe in it so much. You must listen to your customers before you start running into the forest looking for trees. In her experience, the biggest thing owners of fast growth small business do poorly in marketing is focus, which is where your strength of purpose or why comes into play. She believes the hardest thing in growing a small business when it comes to marketing is knowledge, time and budget. Advice she would give a small business owner about marketing on day one is customer. Know who you are creating this product or service for and who you are going to talk to. Understand who they are, what motivates them, what drives them, and why they're going to choose you. Welcome everyone. Today we're breaking from the usual format and speaking with a subject matter expert on marketing. I'm interviewing Toni Kibbey today. Thanks for your time, Toni.
Oh, very welcome.
Let's start with how we know each other. Do you remember?
Well, we met originally through mutual friends.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up working together at Lark Distillery, and our 6-year-old daughters are besties.
They are, indeed, yes. So tell us a little bit about your background and experience.
I've worked in marketing in Tasmania, the UK and New Zealand for the last 25 years.
Yeah,
Ouch.
don't think about it.
Exactly. Across a range of industries, from road safety to whiskey to energy. Also worked in publishing and magazines. And now my focus is on coaching small businesses and startups in their marketing and understanding their consumer.
Yeah, great. I think that's a really important part of small business, particularly. I've come to really value it in the last 10 years. So maybe before we get too far down the interview here, let's can you tell people how they can get in touch with you if they're interested?
Ooh, yes, I can. My email address is Toni, Toni, at elementco, elementco.com.au.
And if anyone's got any questions specifically on marketing, because I'm certainly no marketing expert, you're okay if they just drop you an email?
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, great. And so let's tell the audience why marketing is so important when growing a small business. One of my favourite Peter Drucker quotes, I've got it here, I'll just read it out before you explain why it's so important. But Drucker said, because the purpose of business is to create a customer, the business enterprise has two and only two basic functions, marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results, all the rest are cost. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. And when I read that quote, there's a shorter version of that quote that I read probably 10 or 15 years ago when I really started to get into marketing and swat up on it and learn it and get a mentor or two and do a lot of reading. That just really summed up for me why marketing is so important. You want to talk a bit about that with small business?
Absolutely. Firstly, to reiterate what you've said, without a customer of any sort, then you don't have a business. Someone has to buy something from you to have a business. So that's why your customer is so important. And the other point I wanted to make is marketing is not just advertising. For those of you that might remember in school, we did the 4 Ps that lent to the 7 Ps and sometimes the 8 Ps. And one of those Ps was promotion, which is your advertising. But the rest is around your product, your place, your people, all of those things. And it's really important to really understand that strategy of marketing.
And even pricing as well, because I think a lot of people get confused. They think pricing is part of the sales area of the business, but it's such an important marketing tool to get your pricing right.
Absolutely. And that's why when you look at competitive analysis and things like that, you look where other players are prepared to pay. That's why it's so important when you look at things like a competitive analysis, you look at what other people are charging, which gives an indication of what customers are prepared to pay. And then also you do your customer research to understand what they're prepared to pay, as well as your financials of what your cost of goods and those kinds of things are. So all of those factors are really important, and that's all what marketing is.
Yeah, and because I'm obviously big financial background, or I really enjoy my spreadsheets, but One thing I do remember from university, one of my favourite subjects was microeconomics and talking about price elasticity of demand. And that is all about getting the right price point, the optimal price point, so you maximise your gross profit. So you might sell less units at a higher price, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up with more gross profit as opposed to going low, which a lot of people, it's a very common strategy starting up a business particularly or trying to grow. They're going to compete on price, which is just a race to the bottom, as we know. And finding that right price point so you can balance the premiumness of your offering and the demand or the number of units sold, whether it's widgets or time. It's an art in itself. And actually there's obviously experts and pricing analysts out there that just focus simply on that.
Absolutely. And if you price yourself too low, then you're devaluing your service or your product anyway. And that's why, again, another part of your marketing strategy is your value proposition and your unique selling proposition and why that is so important. If you don't know what is special about you or your service or your product, then all you've got is price, and that's all you've got to sell on. So you really need to unpack that in your marketing planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And my time at New Zealand Whisky in particular, I really got into things like the pricing ladder in your product portfolio, using loss leaders and things like that. And it's such a complex field. But again, just coming back to that point, it's not really a sales function. This is all part of marketing, and it's so, so important. And I just want to go down the path for a second because I know I particularly fell for this early on, but a lot of people are confused about what marketing is. They think it's the brand, it's the logo, etc. But it's such a vast field, isn't it?
It's hugely vast. It's also very challenging sometimes to work out which area you specialize in. But for me, everything starts with strategy. And that strategy is around your brand strategy, which is not your logo, but defining who you are, what your values are, what your personality is, and your marketing strategy, which is who you're talking to and where they want to hear about you from, and a lot of other features. Those are the two key points. The next part around your actual creative and what you look like, and also your marketing plan, what you say and where you say it has to align to that strategy, but you need to get that foundation. It's like the bricks and mortar of your home, really, to get the foundation right.
Yeah, great. Do you have any examples of how powerful marketing can be for business? Or perhaps there's a mutual project, I guess we can talk about, that we worked on together at Lark. When I started there in late 2013, I was really surprised walking to the cellar door, even though I'd been there before as a consumer, with my CEO hat on and kind of business hat on, and also recently swatting up, like I said before, a lot more in marketing, that Lark, this world-class New World whiskey producer, was making 6 or 7 different other spirit types: gin, vodka, rum, brandy, Slonge. And that whole thing of one of the great books I read on positioning, in there they talk about confusing the consumer with too many choices and also not being clear on your why or what you're there to really be the master at and not the jack of all trades. So for me, it was clear that we were saying to our customer base, we're here to make any kind of spirit just to make money. Whereas we had this golden product, which is the whiskey. Bill got the law changed, obviously, in 1991 in Australia to be able to make craft size batches of spirit in Australia. And he was the forerunner of craft distilling in Australia, of which is now over 300. And he's obviously in the Whisky Hall of Fame in London and also known as the godfather of Australian whisky. So, yeah, when I started at Lark...
You're right, Troy. It was a really exciting time when we were at Lark's distillery, and we both supported it and worked with it through a lot of change. What we did, as you said, was really separated out the brand or the gin to be 40 spotted gin, which is aligned or linked to the Lark, with Lark being a bird and, of course, Bill's surname, but 40 spotted also being the 40 spotted pardalote, a rare Tasmanian bird.
Yeah, which is mainly found on the small island here off the mainland of Tasmania called Bruny Island, out of interest. Size of Singapore, but a population of 600, and it's a beautiful space to go and explore.
It is. It's an amazing space. So what we did there was also really understanding our customer. So just to paint a little bit of a picture, Lark's packaging was a very unique square bottle with a navy grey label with copper writing with a whiskey coloured product. 40 spotted was obviously a clear gin. And because we knew there were more women at the time drinking gin, although that's changed in recent years, but more women at the time, we wanted it to have a more feminine look. So it was white with red and black on the bird. So whilst we leveraged the Lark brand a little bit with that, we really positioned it to be its own standalone product and created activations and events that aligned with the brand strategy that we'd created for 40 Spotted. So we created gin gardens both at the distillery and also at events. We used a lot of greenery and freshness to go with that fresh feel of gin. And sometimes if we went to events with both a whiskey and a gin, we'd have two separate stands or two separate sites to keep them as individual brands. So we really built that up from scratch.
Yeah, and it's been quite commercially successful and also allowed the Lark whiskey brand to stand apart or, really be clearly separated in the market.
That's right. And that also adds value to the Lark product.
Yep. And what's one thing you think small business owners focus on growth do really well in this area?
Well, I think most small business owners have a huge amount of passion, and I think they are naturally great around innovation and creativity. That's almost a criteria for an entrepreneur or a small business owner. And they also know their purpose. They come back to what they are doing this for, either personally or for the business side of things. And every time they can get off track a little bit, it comes back to their purpose and what they're trying to achieve.
I think that's really important. An author that you and I are both fans of, Simon Sinek, who's got one of the top 10 most viewed TED Talks. The TED Talk called Start With Why, and his follow-up book and this recent book of Find Your Why, which you've just shown me today, and I've certainly put that on my list to read, is a great area of content for business owners to consume just broadly so they understand why they're in business and frame their whole direction and corral their team along to follow that true passion. But particularly in marketing, understanding the why of your customer and why your products are there is really, really powerful.
That's absolutely true. And it's talking about why you do what you do is more important than how you do it or what you do. And that really, as you say, it aligns to customer values and why your customer chooses certain products and chooses you.
Yeah. And in that video, the TED Talk, he gives a couple of great examples there. One is Martin Luther King Jr. In his famous speech, Simon says, he didn't say, I have a plan. He says, I have a dream. Very much the why. And using Apple as the example of why the consumers really gravitated to the Apple products from the 70s and 80s and 90s all the way through those decades, and why Apple had been such a phenomenal commercial success just goes back to the kernel of obviously Steve Jobs, particularly his why.
That's exactly right. And if you've seen either of the Steve Jobs movies, it really comes out and it's quite prevalent in there that he wanted to make things simple and usable. That was his core thing everywhere, every step of the way, his driving force.
Yeah, that's right. And one thing you think small business owners do poorly in this area of marketing?
I think focus. I think sometimes their passion and innovation gets in the way of focus. And that's where their strength of purpose comes into play. So keep telling yourself or reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing and realign that back to be really focused. Sometimes the passion can overrule the commerciality or the financial viability of something because you believe in it so much. So you also need to be able to listen to your consumers and your customers and what it is that they're telling you to be able to adapt and change and serve your customers. Yeah,
I've certainly made that mistake in previous businesses, being too emotionally blinded or attached to ideas or products and thinking this is what the market wants when in fact I didn't ask the market or test it, and that obviously failed. Do you love talking small business growth with other owners? We have a vibrant online community from many industries around the world. Plus, we regularly add new tools and resources for community members and host 2 webinars a month to help you grow your small business. growsmallbusiness.com. Well, let's talk about professional development. Any resources you'd recommend for the audience? Books, podcasts, online courses, conferences, events?
There are so many. As you know, I geek out on learning and professional development and things like that. My advice is to join a networking group. These days they're mostly online. I'm a member of a couple of them, both within Hobart and also nationally. For female entrepreneurs out there, Business Chicks is an amazing group that costs a couple of $100 a year, but we get access to a huge amount of resources, weekly speakers and national and international speakers and presenters. So really encourage that. Also joining groups within your industry, so Facebook groups particularly, to create your voice in the industry so you become well known or people become aware of who you actually are, but also join groups that might be your indirect or direct competitors. You're probably a little bit quieter in those groups, but it's a voyeur thing. You can see what your competitors are saying, but you can see what their customers, which might be your customers, are saying as well.
Yeah, great. And I'm a big advocate for getting a marketing mentor. There's a lot of small businesses that I work with or talk with, particularly in the distilling space. People go into those businesses because they want to make a fantastic product and they don't understand or really value the power of marketing. So when I speak at the Whiskey Academy, for example, it's one of the big points that I drive home because I know it's such a weakness of people sitting in that audience not understanding marketing, is to go and get a mentor, go and read books, listen to podcasts, etc., do some courses to really swat up on this. It's just so important.
Well, Troy, as I am a marketing mentor and marketing coach, I absolutely encourage anyone to get a marketing mentor or coach. So, yes.
And even I sit on a few boards, and that's one of the first roles that I talk about that a lot of businesses don't understand, that, again, the value. And so we need a marketing person. Usually we need a marketing person on the board because there's not strong internal skills or experience from the founders. So having a marketing advisor or director on the board can just be a wonderful change to the business.
Too many boards, I think, they get a financial person and industry-led. Too many people in the industry, so they all know the same thing and all agree with each other or disagree with each other, rather than trying to get a skills-based board.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, into the final 5 questions then, Toni. What do you think is the hardest thing in marketing a small business?
I would say 3 things: knowledge, time, and budget. As we've talked about all the way through here, is people don't have the knowledge or the time to get the knowledge to then really understand their consumer. And when it comes to budget, I think the challenge there is people think it will be expensive, but it doesn't always have to be. If you get your strategy right, there are so many channels out there that you can tell your story, get your content out there, understand your consumer and talk directly to them. It doesn't have to be expensive, but there's still restraints on people at the moment.
Great. And favourite marketing book you'd recommend?
As you mentioned, you're in my living room at the moment. I have a shelf full of motivational marketing business books. One of the best books that I've read around brand strategy and the most simple is The Brand Gap by Marty Neumeier.
Great.
Really, really easy to read, almost like a PowerPoint in a book.
Yep.
Explaining the importance of understanding your brand strategy and what a brand strategy is.
Great. I'm going to add that to the list. And obviously the Simon Sinek books as well.
Yeah, the Simon Sinek Start With Your Why, which is pretty much a repeat of the video. TED Talk. So anyone go on Google Simon Sinek, Sinek, and watch the video. And then he's got some follow-up books. The one that I particularly like is a facilitator's book to help you unpack your why and find your purpose.
And that's called Find Your Why. So we'll put that in the show notes as well. What about any great podcasts or online learning tools you'd recommend?
Seth Godin, subscribe to him as well as his podcast. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yes, very active Energizer Bunny character.
He is, and quite controversial in some of his opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall the names of them, but I often search for mindset in business and those kinds of things, because it's not just down to the practicalities and the numbers and even the marketing strategy. It's about having your headspace in the right space.
Yeah,
so.
That's great. And one of the ones I listen to is Small Business, Big Marketing, which I was put onto by a couple of people I've interviewed on this podcast. I've listened to a few episodes there. Tim Reed from Noosa in Queensland, actually here in Australia. He's the host on that. And he's had Michael Gerber on there, the author of The E-Myth, which I'm a big fan of. And I've listened to a few other episodes. They're good. They're a bit long for my liking and a bit too open, and not specific enough. But, it's still great content. I'm not sure if you've seen that one.
I haven't seen that, but I have written it down and I will be listening to it when I have spare time.
Great. One marketing tool you'd suggest our audience use for this area of fast growth?
So many, but as I've said with everything, it comes back to strategy and it's knowing your customer. So surveys, research. I know that's not a specific tool, but find out your customers, ask them why they choose you.
Yep.
I do a little exercise with my clients called 20 Reasons Why, and you need to find out 20 reasons why your customer chooses you. And if you get to about 12 or 13, don't stop. You've got to get yourself to 20, because that's when the gold and the magic is, because the first few are the ones that just roll off your head. And then all of a sudden you go, there's that.
That's great. That's a really simple trick, but I think very powerful. Mm. And final, and one of my favourite questions, what is the one thing you would say to a small business owner starting out on their growth journey on their day one?
Make sure you've done all the formalities, like got your insurance and your tax file number and your ATO and all of that sort of stuff done. Again, customer. Know who you are creating this product or service for and who you're going to talk to. Understand who they are, what motivates them, what drives them, and why they are going to choose you.
Yeah, a little bit of research up front can save you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of stress, and even a failed business if you get your value proposition aligned, what they often say in tech, particularly product market fit. Is there a market, that old saying, gap in the market in the gap, etc. So do your research, invest that time up front and save everyone the time, and you're going to have a better chance of success.
And I think, though, there's also, it comes back to that budget thing around marketing. It doesn't have to be expensive or hard these days, you know.
Well, it's as simple as putting up a Facebook poll or use Google Forms to create a survey or SurveyMonkey, send those and just get them out there and start getting that data in and having a look at it. And I've certainly changed recently on a project or a business I've been working on, really changed the product offering that we're going to be launching with just by listening and asking more questions and not rushing into the forest looking for trees, as I like to say, and just going and doing it. Doing the research.
Absolutely key.
Well, thanks for your time today, Toni. I think the audience got a shit ton of value out of what you shared with us today, and I'm looking forward to getting you back on the cast maybe next year.
I hope so. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Troy.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey. We'll have all the show notes and any resources mentioned in the cast on our website. With over 25 years in marketing, especially in small business, Toni strongly believes if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. And that's where your marketing should be built around. Marketing is more than a logo or advertising. It's a diverse range of elements, from pricing, people, copy, packaging, and a quality product or service. For small business owners, sometimes the passion can overrule the commerciality or viability of something as you believe in it so much. You must listen to your customers before you start running into the forest looking for trees. In her experience, the biggest thing owners of fast growth small business do poorly in marketing is focus, which is where your strength of purpose or why comes into play. She believes the hardest thing in growing a small business when it comes to marketing is knowledge, time and budget. Advice she would give a small business owner about marketing on day one is customer. Know who you are creating this product or service for and who you're going to talk to. Understand who they are, what motivates them, what drives them, and why they're going to choose you.